How often do you have a dish that calls to lick it by its name? Chaat is one such dish in India, which literally means to lick, because you're supposed to lick the plate clean when you're having chaat. And they say, if it's chaat, it has to be from Delhi. Agar chaat ho, to Dilli ki. Hi, this is Ranveer Brar, and let's listen to the story of chaat, and let's cook some chaat only on India in 21 recipes. Let's get started. There's something special about chaat. A chaat in India is a good way to bind families together. It's a good way to bring the entire family on the table, much like what Indian mothers do. So there are two parts to the recipe. One, obviously, is cooking the main ingredient of the chaat. You usually start with the starch, whether it's potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, taro, tapioca, or what we call kachalu, right? And the second bit is the condiments and the spices and the chutneys that go with it. There is a reason why all of it is put together, and we'll talk about that reason as well. First, let's look at what we're going to cook today, right? I have some sweet potatoes here. You could roast these sweet potatoes or boil them. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take these sweet potatoes, wrap them in silver foil, sprinkle a little bit of salt, pour a little bit of ghee, that's clarified butter, or oil if you want. In case you're putting oil, my suggestion is to use extra virgin olive oil. Goes very well with root vegetables and roasted flavors. And fold it, put it on the side. Now there are two sides to a silver foil. There's a matte side and there's a shiny side. Whenever you're roasting something, the shiny side has to be inside, because scientifically the shiny side will reflect light and heat, and if it reflects heat, it won't absorb as much. That's why the matte side of the silver foil always should be facing outside towards the source of heat. Simple. This goes into the oven at 175 to 180 degrees for, I'd say, 30 to 35 minutes. You should ideally check after 30 minutes if you think it needs more cooking. Give it more time. The smaller ones cook faster, needless to say. Every time you put it in the oven should be preheated. Do not start with a cold oven, because it dries the ingredients out, especially if you're looking at juiciness in the end product. Now, obviously, I will not make you wait for 35 minutes, so here we go. I have some sweet potatoes that are roasted and peeled. And now I'm going to use my favorite 17 centimeter santoku. The reason I'm using this on particularly sweet potatoes or any boiled starchy vegetable is because it tends to stick to a normal knife. But the serrations on the santoku allow air to pass through, and any sticky vegetable or cheese gets sliced easily. That's why anytime you're dealing with boiled potatoes, roasted yams, sweet potatoes, go for the santoku. Also, the broader blade allows you to sort of go in deep into thicker vegetables as well, without worrying about the control on the knife. The idea here is to cut it into bite-sized pieces, almost even, if not even. Yeah. So like we were saying, any chaat will have three elements to it. The first element is the starch or the body. The second element is the spice. The third element is the chutneys or the relishes. There is a fourth invisible, very important element, which is the ghee. And to that starts the story of how chaat was made. So it is said that a lot of Indian rivers did not allow habitation because the water wasn't as clean. One such river was Yamuna. So when Shah Jahan built Delhi, or then called Shah Jahanabad, around the river Yamuna, he was told that the water would make the inhabitants sick. it would make their stomachs bad. So he did a little bit of research and they created something called a chaat. The chaat was the medicine with the ghee and the spices and the relishes that was supposed to keep the digestive system intact. And thus, Delhi got its first chaat. So this is a chaat masala. Again, you could make it different ways. This is my recipe, never fails. You start with fennel, cumin. This combination is the core of all chaat masalas, typically because if God created two spices that were beneficial for the gut, it was fennel and cumin. And that's why in any chaat masala, fennel and cumin are key. They are nature's most effective gut balancers. So I put equal quantities of fennel and cumin. You could increase the cumin a little more. I'm going to add black pepper. Extremely good for the blood, the gut. It's called the black gold, right? I always say you would not have discovered the world if there was no black pepper. Whether it was Christopher Columbus or our dear friend Vasco da Gama, nobody would have gone looking for anything if there weren't spices in India. Black cardamom, a little bit of green cardamom. This is optional. I prefer adding a little bit of coriander seeds. And we're good. Now just so all of it roasts evenly, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. And here we are. What salt does is it sort of absorbs the temperature from both the pan and the spices, makes the temperature more even. The roasting sort of takes time, gets more character. Also, the roasted spice stays for longer because when you put salt in it, the spice doesn't absorb water, doesn't become cakey. Also, the salt absorbs the flavors from the spice and hence the spice becomes rancid, if it does at all, much later. That's our chaat masala, and before it goes into grinding, I'm going to add my secret ingredient. Alright, the secret ingredient in this case is dry mango powder, or amchur as we call it. This balance of sweet, sour, spicy is what makes a chaat a chaat. What makes chaat lickable is this sweet, sour, spicy combination. I'm going to add a little bit of Asafoetida, hing. Perfect. This goes for grinding. Ideally, do not grind it too fine, keep it coarse, because the spice, other than obviously adding the spice, adds texture as well. So if you grind it too fine, that slightly gritty texture of the spice is going to go missing. While the spice is being ground, let's come back to what we're doing with the potatoes. So what I've done now is poured the fourth invisible yet the most effective medicine and the most effective ingredient of the chaat, which is ghee. There is no chaat without ghee. So you take a little bit of ghee, which is clarified butter. If you're not from India and you want to make it at home, ideally you should just take butter, put it in your oven at like 140 degrees, leave it there for an hour, right? Allow the milk solids to settle down, slightly stick to the surface, remove the yellow liquid from the top. That is ghee or clarified butter. So we'll wait for the ghee to heat up. The idea is to take these potatoes and stir fry them in ghee, make them slightly crispy, add a little bit of texture. Also, what's really important to understand here is you could also deep fry this or just air fry them and then drizzle ghee on top. You could also bake these potatoes or sweet potatoes in the oven. In case you're baking them, my suggestion is you should bake them at like 220 degrees so they get a nice charred crust on top and don't dry out. When the ghee is hot, time to put the potatoes, the sweet potatoes. And don't hurry and don't worry. Let the ghee do its magic. What they say in Ayurveda is ghee is like the nectar that binds all medicines. All right, here we are. The trick is to get your potatoes nice and crispy. I always say this, nothing beats the smell of good fried potatoes, whether it's the fries of England or it is the chaat of India. till you get that smell of crisp fried potato, you're not there yet. That is the ultimate prize you're looking for. Before the plating, let's chop up some coriander. We're going to need that. Back to my santoku. You know, the advantage of a Victorinox santoku is that it acts both as a cleaver and as a knife. When you're using a cleaver, you want to lift and cut like this. When you're using a knife, you just want to rock and cut like this. A santoku can do both. Now, while the potatoes are hot, is when you have to add your chaat masala. Yeah, and after you add your chaat masala, just add a spoonful of ghee so the masala sticks to the potatoes. Here you are. Yeah. Nice. The fennel and the cumin really needs to come through. Now we can plate. You know, for you it might be yogurt, but there's nothing like yogurt for gut health. Tamarind chutney. Now this is optional. This is save, basically fried vermicelli, pomegranate seeds, for freshness and for color. If you like it spicy, then a little bit of chili powder. Beautiful. You know what I tell people? I say I'm from the country in which medicines are the most tastiest. Which country can boast of medicines in the kitchen? India alone. This is Ranveer Brar signing off. See you again with another recipes on India in 21 recipes.